algorithms where you would derive one algorithm or one training method that could be applied for many different things, as opposed to having one algorithm that does vision, one algorithm that does speech. As far as we know, we don't engage different kinds of learning for different types of feedback and inputs. We have one learning way of doing things. So it was at that point that we decided we wanted to engage some neuroscience. So we went to the Brain Symposium that was held by the Florey, met some people there, got together, and brainstormed some ideas, and we said this would be something really cool that we would love to do and work with the Florey. So we did work with the Florey for a bit. However, the pace of their research along with the pace that we needed to work at didn't quite match up. And so that was when we decided that we would need to run our own laboratory and run our biology, because there was a split between them doing the biology and us doing the computer science, that we needed to both run them together so that they would be complementary at the right speed. So that's how we ended up here.
So, in a very, very sort of summarized way, Trump directed you into neuroscience.
You could say so, yes. Yep.
And I guess ripple effects are always unpredictable.
Chaos theory. You never know, one small drop, what happens. Yep.
And two last questions. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, getting a message out there to millions or billions, what would it say and why? Could be a few words or a paragraph.
Giant billboard, what would I say? I don't know. What would I want to tell people? I suppose it would be a giant billboard to say, invest in our future. So often I see a lot of stories about people getting funded, and I'm going, but why? Right. Well, the more like things like such as Snapchat that IPO'd for $19 billion. And you go, but why? It's an app that has a message that disappears. $19 billion could fund a lot of cures for cancer. Could fund a lot of cures for malaria, polio. I mean, this is the reason why I really idolize people like Bill Gates as opposed to Elon Musk. I know it's a very controversial thing, but Bill doesn't talk about what he does. I mean, everybody knows what he does, but he doesn't talk about it as much as Musk does. But he's actually solving a real problem that's affecting a lot of poor people around the world. On the other hand, what Musk really does is he makes shiny toys for very rich people who can afford them. So I would say invest in the future rather than. It's somewhat funny when I say that because all investors do invest for the future, but more for the progress of humanity than for short-term profits. That would be my message, I would say.
And what advice do you think medical students should ignore that they hear too much?
They hear too much. What, all right, you tell me, what do you hear a lot? I haven't been a medical student for a long time now, so.
I hear everything, to be honest.
Yeah? I suppose one of the things is don't limit yourself, right? Don't limit yourself. You get told a lot of you get asked a lot, what's your specialty? What are you going to do, right? Don't be afraid to go, well, I'm going to do something else. Like something different. And I suppose this goes back to the point of why you're doing these interviews, right? And why you want to highlight what medical education does. Medical education really gives you the ability to think outside. It gives you very good hypothetical deductive reasoning skills to make sense of imperfect information, imperfect data. And that's a very, very valuable skill that you can have in business, in science, in communications, all sorts of things, because the world we live in is full of imperfect information. And what medicine does is it hones that skill so that you can be as objective as you can, given the limited amount of information, and for you to seek more information to make rational decisions. So I would say don't limit yourself to only pursuing the traditional areas of medicine. Look into areas where you're passionate about. Like, for instance, if you love computer science, you love machine learning, you like ophthalmology, why not combine those two? That's happening at Google right now. So yeah, don't limit yourself to just go, but this is what my course tells me to do, and I can only end up being this, because there are a lot of options out there.
That's all the questions that I have
Yep.
today. Sarah, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I was just curious, now are people still using the original devices that you made, the no touch sort of stethoscope,
Yeah.
and that, are they still being used? And
Yeah, we have about 10,000 users, about 1,000 monthly active users. Most of them.
and is it an app on the phone, or is it a device you put onto the phone?
It's both. So it's a device that connects to an app on our phone.
Okay.
Right, and we've had several partners using this. In the United States, we have Dr. Brahman, which is a telemedical service. In Saudi Arabia, which is really interesting how they came about it, but it makes a lot of sense. Previously, when women weren't allowed to drive, so telemedicine devices helped deliver the care that they weren't able to seek if they needed to get a chaperone to drive them around. So that was one of the very interesting places that we rolled it out to. We've had it in Canada as well. So the Canadians use it via a service called Maple. A lot of concierge medical practices use them as well in Florida. So yeah, the devices are being used. We have back-end analytics that track the statistics, and people are using them, they're recording them, and we get reports sometimes when some of our servers go down for maintenance, like, hey, it's not working, and we're like, yeah, we're doing some maintenance work. So people are still using them.
Yeah.